Now, in the UK, tomorrow is a big day in politics. There is a big set piece tomorrow because it is the annual government budget. Every year, the Chancellor of the Exchequer sets out how much he's going to spend, how much he's going to tax people, and how much he needs to borrow. People look at this essentially because they want to know what the new tax rates are going to be and the requirement that the government needs in order to be able to spend what it wants to spend. In my mind, government spending in the UK is absolutely horrendous. It has got completely out of control over the last 14 years of Conservative rule and 13 years before that of Labour rule. You would probably be astounded if you actually knew how much the government spent in this financial year. These are the figures. The estimate for how much it wants to spend on everything, or how much it needs to spend, is 1.2 trillion pounds, or 1.2 million, if you like, which is an amount of money that we cannot really comprehend. But if you break it down into households, that equates to £42,000 per household. That is how much the government spends on all of what it does. Now, some of what it does is essential. You know, there's healthcare, there's education, there's looking after roads and things like that. Things that we expect the government to do, provide a police force and military armed forces to defend ourselves. Not that they're doing a very good job, actually, of defending our southern border, but never mind about that. The government can only get money from two places. It can either tax people today, or it can borrow money and tax people tomorrow, either by increasing taxes later on or by inflating the pound so that your purchasing power goes down. Every pound today is worth a lot less than a pound was 10 years ago, even less than it was worth 20 years ago or 50 years ago. That's how inflation works. And it's a good way of the government taking your wealth without you realizing that your wealth is being taken. But what the budget is likely to say tomorrow has already been released. You know, when I was younger, nobody knew what was going to be in the budget. It was a tightly held secret, and you didn't know until the day of the budget that the things were being announced on. Today, there's a whole load of pre-announcements and leaks and controlled leaks and press releases. So you pretty much know what's going to be in the budget before it even happens. So the main headline that everyone thinks is going to happen, it might not 100% sure, but people think that he's going to do something for an election year bribe, which is to reduce the headline rate of national insurance from 12% down to 10%. Now, national insurance is something that we pay along with income tax. They might as well be the same thing, to be honest. So if you earn money and you're employed by an employer, you pay tax as you go, you essentially pay 32% income tax and national insurance combined. That's going to go down to 30% tomorrow, which sounds good. They're giving you money with one hand, so it seems, although actually what it is they're not taking as much of your money as they already do. But what they're going to do as well is take money with the other hand, because we are in a period of what's called fiscal drag. People don't understand this concept too much. It's very, very clever. What they're doing is, for 7 years, they have frozen the income tax and national insurance thresholds above which you pay tax. Normally, it goes up every single year with inflation so that you get a certain amount of money, which can buy a certain amount of things without being taxed on it. But that amount is not increasing with inflation from 2022 right up until 2028, 6 years, sorry, not 7 years. So they're not going to increase the threshold, which means that you're not going to get the normal inflationary increase in the amount of money that you can earn without paying tax on it. So they're giving you with one hand, taking with the other. What they're also proposing to do is hugely increase tax on cigarettes. Now, that doesn't affect me because I don't smoke, but if you do smoke, you're an easy target for getting taxed. And they're also talking about reducing or repealing, scrapping what's called the non-dom status. Now, it's a moot point whether that's going to do any good and get more money for the country or not. I don't know. You'd have to do a lot of statistical analysis on that to work that out. But what I would suggest we really need to do is cut the amount that we need to borrow, because even with all of these taxes in this financial year, it only accounts for 90% approximately of what the government is spending. They're spending 1,200 billion, and they need to borrow about 130 billion from the Bank of England and other places in order to plug the hole that they don't get from taxing you. And this then needs to be paid back in the future. And if they don't pay it back, then the pound in your pocket will decrease in value by about 10%, no, about 5%, because that's what they're adding to the national debt every year. And we have a mountain of national debt with a number that is very difficult to comprehend again, 2.5 trillion. I think it's 2.7 trillion now this year, and that's going up by 130 billion every year. They waste huge amounts of money on diversity officers, on mass immigration, on subsidies for wind turbines and solar panels that hardly provide any electricity when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. They waste money on wokery and diversity officers. We heard in the program last week, there were 10,000 diversity officers just working in the NHS together with a combined salary of £500 million. They give huge amounts of money to NGOs, which then use that money to lobby the government to get more money from the government, which is a closed circle of profligacy and waste. We need to close down all of these things, reduce our national deficit to zero, start reducing our national debt, and then we could actually start reducing our rates of taxation on a sustained level. The fake Conservative government that's going to give the budget tomorrow is not Conservative at all.